Well, we're going to give it another minute or two before I introduce our illustrious guests here, and I'll cover some housekeeping and logistics stuff, and then we'll kick off the conversation. I want to make sure we have a good amount of time, so I'll probably wait like another minute or two before introducing
It's a
everyone.
rare gloomy day in San Francisco, Kevin.
Yeah, very very rare.
Does that
Actually,
mean the surf is good? Usually if it's stormy, there should be some waves. Why are you hosting a webinar?
well, yeah, if I'm allowed to go take a surf break. Having a 4-month-old at home too is not so conducive to surfing, but the waves are pretty big right now. It's just a little windy and not good. So that's a surf forecast from San Francisco. 50-degree water, cold, windy. Probably not the best time out there, but lots of swell. So we're getting a little storm coming in right now.
We
Even
were
though
we were comment we
all
were commenting as a team, like without selection bias. I think we've hired like three of our last five hires are like avid surfers from all different parts of the world. One in Europe, one in San Francisco, one in Southern California. Or I don't know what we're attracting, but
I think
let my
it's
people go
my
surfing.
vibes. I'm bringing on the surf vibes. I think I was the first one, and then everyone else just kind of followed along. So
Wow, and doing this at the perfect time is the whole idea of surfing.
There we go.
Internet-wise is changing. So, all
Scott
right,
coming in
that
with
dad
the
joke is done.
Scott coming in with the dad jokes. I need to up my dad joke
My
game.
my embarrassing story about surfing is like I'm a huge outdoors person. I love trail running, mountain biking, through hiking, you name it. Then I realized like I should love surfing and I get out there. I am like so easily prone to like being car sick. Like it's never to the level where like violently gonna throw up. I just don't feel good. And I'm sitting out on the waves, Kevin, and I'm like, I am car sick sitting on the waves. Like I'm actually feeling nauseous just like all day rocking. I'm like, this is not the sport for me. I gotta go find something where I have a little more control.
That is the first time I've ever heard that. Most people say it's brutal. I have noodle arms. Like I can't take the endurance part of it when they're learning, but
No,
getting
I
motion
love
sick,
I love the
motion sick.
endurance part of it. I mean, I'm out here doing 75-mile mountain bike rides and like long hikes, and I was like swimming out is such a rush. And then I'm like, I get there, I'm like, I am literally sick in the water. This is not the right sport for me. So that's my embarrassing fact of why I gave up on my surfing dreams.
All right. Well, we got to get you back in there. Okay. I think I think we should start. We're 4 minutes in, and so I will introduce our guests here and cover some housekeeping items, and then pass it right off to Scott. So thanks everyone for joining. It looks like we have 50 plus people on here. I'm sure by the end of it we'll get to about 100 or more. So lots of attendance for this and lots of interest in registrations. We're going to be talking about, well, we titled it "The Bot Stops Here." It's kind of a fun title that Scott came up with. And we're going to be talking about AI search and how marketing and the marketing tech stack and AI is all kind of merging, collapsing, what to do, providing all this kind of guidance for hopefully for the group here. And so I to cover like a few housekeeping items, we are recording here. We will share the recording after the event. It probably takes us like 24 hours to turn that around. That's on me. And so expect an email from me with a recording. Um, if you want to ask a question, please try and use the Q&A little feature on Zoom. That's a little bit easier for us to manage and coordinate. And I'm also looking at the screen, listening in, and then trying to field questions. So that makes it easier on me if you use the Q&A thing. But if not, we'll also be looking at the chat for questions. And then what else? I think that's mostly it. Now I will pass things off to introduce Scott and Chris and pass things off. So Chris is my boss. He's the CEO and co-founder of Scrunch. We work with a lot of all the way from enterprise customers to fast-growing startups, trying to navigate the world of, my customers are going to AI platforms. How do I reach them there? What do I do about it? All this kind of stuff. We're going to be getting deep into that in this conversation. And then our illustrious guest, Scott Brinker, who I've been following for quite a long time through all the different MarTech, Lumascape. I don't know what we actually call it now, Scott. Marketing
We call
technology.
it a big mess.
And we were joking before. It's kind of Scott's famous slash infamous for that because it's quite an evolution of how things have grown and exploded over time. And Scott has been doing like a lot of really great research with Chief Martech and especially in this space. And so I think that's one of the places where we wanted to kick things off. And so without further ado, let me pass it over to you, Scott, and I will drive and hopefully match your talking points here.
All right, that sounds great, Kevin. Thank you so much for that intro. Yeah, absolutely. Been really looking forward to having this session. So just a little bit of context for this. For the past few months, Franz Remersma and I have been working on our big MarTech for 2026 report, which will be out in December. You know, and what we're very much trying to do is like not talk about far-flung future visions, but like really focus on like, okay, over the next 6 to 12 months, what are the things that operationally marketing teams really need to be in tune to and like really need to adapting? Of course, like, you know, you move forward a couple slides here, Kevin, you know, the big theme everyone's talking about is agents, you know, it's agent everything. Once upon a time, it used to be CDP everything. Now it's agent everything. But it was interesting as we were diving into this, you know, we sort of saw agents falling into three categories. There's a whole bunch of these agents that are really behind the scenes for marketing. You know, all sorts of tools to help like augment and amplify and accelerate how marketers do the work they do. But it's all behind the scenes. It isn't customers directly dealing with those AI agents. There are definitely a set of agents that marketers and sales and go-to-market teams control, but they're customer facing. Probably the best example of this is things like the customer service, you know, chatbots. I mean, let's face it, chatbots on websites have been around for a while. They've also largely sucked, you know, for a long time, except over this past year. You know, as we started to plug in these LLMs that are very good conversationally, and we started to connect these things to more of our back office data with knowledge bases and ticket histories, all of a sudden, those things are actually getting pretty good. They're getting good resolution rates. There's other kinds of agents you see marketers playing around with, things like AI SDRs and, you know, shopper concierges. And while these things are meant to serve the customer, they're still basically operating under the marketer's control. The most interesting category to us, though, is this third category of, you know, what we've called agents of customers. These are agents working on behalf of the customer, not on behalf of the marketer. The most obvious example of these are the AI assistants, you know, ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, you know, the new search tools like Perplexity, because these are agents that are doing the bidding of the customer. And we as marketers are now having to adapt to like, okay, well, wait a second, how do we even engage with these? You know, and so if you click through to this next slide here,
Can
you
I actually
know,
interrupt and ask a
oh,
question? One of
please,
the
yeah.
beauties of like getting to do the webinar with Scott is I get to ask the questions that I didn't get to ask in our first couple catch ups. I love this breakdown of agents for customers and then agents of customers. And I'm curious, Scott, how you think this may play out in a world where if I have an agent, be it today a pretty elementary one like the ChatGPT retrieval agent, just kind of getting content for me, or some of these emerging agents, do you think those agents want to talk to other agents, right? So if you think about the first step was like we built these agents for our customers, but then it's kind of getting leapfrogged where humans are saying, wait a second, maybe I don't want to talk to an AI agent. I want my agent to do the discovery, the research, and maybe move into the transaction funnel. I'm curious if in your research that's showing up at all of actually want to bypass the agents for customers and just use an agent myself.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The short answer is that is clearly where things are emerging.
Mm,
You know, it's still very new here. But yeah, this idea that at the end of the day, content is still a somewhat challenging mechanism by which
mm,
to conduct business. You know, it's
mhm,
great for being able to do research. It's great for being able to do information and synthesis and all this. But when you actually want to start to do things like conduct transactions or like get a price
mhm,
quota and something like that, that's the point in time where you really do need like a service that can
Hmm.
deliver that. And I think you're absolutely right. You're starting to see, even with some of the things in ChatGPT and whatnot, like the instant checkout and ChatGPT apps and things like this idea of saying like, oh, okay, well, these agents, they're not just good at working with content, they're also capable of reasoning and working with tools. And
Hmm.
so if us as marketers, we get in a position where we can actually expose tools as part of our front office, to the AI world and help those agents be able to execute the next step of discovery, the next step of actually making a transaction.
Yep.
I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Have
I
your
think I
agent
think
call
it's
my agent. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that like despite the power of a large language model, you don't actually want a large language model to finish the transaction. You want your agent to leverage an API to make sure they understand the right price or the inventory level. You don't want a model synthesizing and guessing. You actually want to return to the basics to do some of that. Last thing before I let you go to your next slide, I'm curious in this agents of customers bucket, any favorites for you as a customer, as a consumer, like anything that you've played with where you've obviously the AI assistants have been transformative for almost everyone. Curious what your favorites are in this category for yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the AI assistant, I pretty much use all of them, but I have to say I do have a preference for Claude these days.
Mm.
This is going to sound weird to say this, but I feel like Claude gets me.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I've also been playing around with the agentic browsers a bit too, and this is fascinating because I know we're going to talk a little bit about like sort of where is the center of gravity from where people are working. It makes a lot of sense that it's increasingly just directly in those AI assistants. But there are definitely scenarios in which people are still going to websites,
Mm.
because there's something they want to accomplish or there's some sort of experience they're looking to do. But it's really fascinating in playing around with some of these agentic browsers, the ability for the customer to dynamically reshape what that experience is like.
Mm.
I find the same thing with some like the content remix stuff of like, hey, someone who is maybe interested in today's webinar, but instead is going to essentially like, oh, well, I'll tell you what, just have my thing, like get the recording of this. And then I
Mhm.
wanted to translate it into, like an interactive podcast or, I prefer to read some short summaries of it and pull out highlights. This ability to just manipulate, marketing that is being generated by businesses, giving customers and prospects the ability to manipulate that into like, oh, well, what's the way they actually want to consume it? I mean, that's fascinating.
Mm.
I booted out all the bots, so we don't have any of the listeners here.
They're going to come back for us on that.
Next slide.
There we go.
Anyways, so all that as a lead up to say, like, I really do feel like this agents of customers, agents for marketers, agents for customers, the things marketers control, they're definitely improving marketing. A lot of them about the efficiency plays of, how do we do more, better, faster, cheaper, expanding some new creative possibilities too. It's very much about improving marketing versus these agents of customers. You just see this happening at an incredible rate. They're truly disrupting marketing. They are changing the patterns of how businesses and customers find each other, engage with each other, do business. Um, and so this to me is the most fascinating space. And of course, AEO, GEO. Chris, what's the official term we should be using for this
Man,
way of?
I, my preference is we call it AI search. I think every search platform is shifting to being powered by AI, and there's 20 acronyms. They're all great. AEO, GEO, AAO, LLMO. Honestly, I think we're going to call it search because when we search, we wanted answers, we wanted outcomes, but it'll take a little time to kind of align on the acronym.
Fantastic. All right. Well,
Next slide.
researching AI search is what led me to sync up with Chris and just peppered him with a ton of questions here about like, okay, how's this actually working? And, what's the differences between what we've been doing with, Google search and, how should marketers think about this? And that led to a number of conversations that we decided like, wow, okay, actually, these questions that I have are probably questions a number of other folks have. So how about we take this show on the road as we are today to go into that? I guess one more thing I'll like point out here before we dive into that is one of the things we did for this MarTech for 2026 report was interview a whole bunch of like marketing ops and marketing technology leaders about different ways they were actually adapting to these different kinds of agents in their operations. And one stat that I found fascinating, we're asking about, okay, how are they thinking about supporting those agents of customers? And by far, the number one thing people said, like, oh, well, we're definitely doing this. It's publishing AI optimized content, recognizing that, okay, just like SEO is such an enormous factor for us, we have to be able to make sure we're publishing things for these AI answer engines, these AI search engines. But then almost dead last was, okay, how many of them are actually measuring this work that they're doing with
Mm.
AI search? And so like the massive gap and dichotomy between like, yes, this is really important to us, and no, we're probably not actually like managing this or measuring this in any sort of systematic way. Felt like, okay, this is the opportunity for us to close that gap. So.
One comment on this, I got to share this. A friend shared an article with me. Actually, I'll drop it in the chat here at the risk of distracting everybody with more random thoughts. But there's this security researcher, Bruce, I think his last name is Schneier, if I've got
Oh
it right.
yeah, famous,
Yeah,
famous.
famous guy. I didn't know how to say his last name. I've read his stuff, but he put a post out recently. He's from the Harvard Kennedy School about how humans are adapting their speech to be highlighted by the AI note takers. So imagine you're doing an earnings call and you've figured out what granola or the various Firefly note takers are mapping to. And so you start to say things like, the main factor to pay attention to in our earnings is this. And that's what arises in the summary. So, on your slide, Scott, you were talking about like
Yeah.
AI optimized content for inclusion in AI search results. The spiral effect of this is wild, right? Of like humans starting to adapt their spoken word to be included. And as an aside, for those of you that are, more playful and try to have some fun with these things, my favorite thing to do in a meeting, where if it's just you in the meeting and five note takers have joined and you're waiting for the others who are late, you have free reign to talk however you want to those note takers. You can say the craziest things in the world you want. They're taking the notes, and when the summary of that meeting goes out to the owner of said note taker, they're going to be like, was that the meeting I was in? So I encourage a little playfulness in this category as well. But looking at this publishing of AI optimized content chart, thinking back to how we're already adapting our human behavior for inclusion is just like we are so early in this, and it's just a fun one to talk about.
That's awesome. Okay. I feel sorry for everyone who comes to the meetings now of the folks who are attending this webinar. They're in for a ride.
Yeah,
Um,
you don't know what I was saying before we started, so the audience will find out. Maybe this is a good time to transition into like the first topic that Scott you had for Chris, which is like around how are we outsourcing our browsing to AI? Maybe if there's like a pointed question that you have here, Scott, but if not, like I think Chris can also field some of this himself too.
Well, I think we're seeing this behavior, right? This has shifted. I mean, I can speak anecdotally, of course, but the stats are showing just this shift of people spending more and more time in these AI assistants. It's not the old-fashioned model of like, oh, I do a query on Google, I get a bunch of links, I now have to hunt off and go to these different links, and that's some sort of iterative, SEO process we had before. It's like, oh yeah, I ask a question of my AI assistant, and then based on its answer, I ask follow-up questions, and an entire dialogue, an entire research process might happen with you never actually leaping off to any of those particular websites. I know people freak out about like this drop in website traffic as a result of that, and we'll talk a bit about the challenges of visibility there and how you substitute on that. But I think one thing to always keep in mind here is this isn't a drop off in interest. In fact, if anything, I think AI assistants, you look at the length of these sessions that people are having, this might actually be a way of actually driving more interesting dialogue around your company or around your area of subject expertise. What do you see, Chris?
Yeah, I think, you highlighted in that chart, like people are optimizing, but maybe not even measuring yet. And I think while there may be a fall off in some categories of traditional organic referral traffic, what we're seeing is that the traffic being referred from AI search platforms. So if I'm getting a referral visitor from ChatGPT or Perplexity, depending on your vertical, those folks are converting at anywhere from like 2 to 10x the rate. And you just pause for a second. It's intuitive why, right? It's like, as Scott just outlined, I've done my research. I did not want to go read 10 websites to try to make sense of the content and synthesize the information for myself. I outsourced browsing and shortcut my buyer journey. And so, even as we were first exploring this concept for the company at 2.5 years ago, I was realizing like I'm happy to outsource the task of top of funnel discovery and research unless it's an area I really personally want to go deep on. And there's going to be those outliers, but I think we're seeing it shift. And Kevin, if you go to that next slide, I think we have some stats on it. This stat was actually from a Tomaz, a great investor out of the Bay Area, that in North America, more than 60% of searches are powered by large language models today. And I think that number, it caught me off guard when I first saw it. I'm in the category, but the reason that number is so high is because there's many of us that are seeking that experience out with ChatGPT, with Perplexity, with Gemini. But my favorite kind of customer studies and panel discussions we go through are people that are saying, I've never used ChatGPT or AI search, but I love that Google's just answering the question for me now. Pause. The Google AI overview is powered by Google's large language models doing the same exact thing. And so when you aggregate AI overviews, AI mode, Gemini, Perplexity, GPT, we've tipped the scale. We're at more than 60% of web search in North America is getting an AI answer before I ever get a set of websites to consider. So I think it's shifted. Like consumers are habituating to this. It's proven that we like it. And now marketers are starting to wrap their heads around the question of, well, who am I writing content for, right? Like who is my website for if most of this journey is happening through a chat pane or through a voice, interface that's kind of finally taking precedence. So we're seeing that shift firsthand in our data set.
Well, that's probably the perfect segue, for the top question I know I have, but a lot of people do, which is like, okay, it is now really important how we show up in these AI searches. How do we do that? Like, how is that? We've spent like 20, 25 years practicing how to get that right, with the Google bot and
Yeah.
SEO. What changes for us in AI search?
Yeah. There's some very fundamental changes, and then there's some foundations that I would encourage the audience to not bail on, right? I think
Mhm.
headlines drive sensation. But the first thing I want to say is AI search is built on the foundation of search engine optimization. If you are an SEO practitioner, if you are a marketing team, your search engine optimization team and strategy are never more important. And why? It's because AI needs to know what to look at when it wants to get the information to answer a question. It's relying on traditional search indexes. Those search indexes are still largely powered by the Google bot, by ranking algorithms, right? And so, whereas SEO was largely about visibility in search, like making your way to the top 10 list, AI search results is about inclusion in the answer. So,
Mhm.
if we build from the foundation, I need to be visible to be included. And so, your SEO practices have never been more critical, but to get included, you're going to start thinking about your content a bit differently, right? You're going to start to think about who you're writing for a little bit differently. So I always remind folks, build on that foundation of search optimization, but know that the king in that space has been Google for the longest time. Their holy grail has been the search index, competing with Bing and Brave. Our data shows that very prevalent retrieval agents, very prevalent AI agents are the indexers from ChatGPT, from Perplexity, from Claude. They're building their own index of the web to reduce their reliance on Google, Bing, and Brave. And so if you had used ChatGPT maybe a year ago, all of their results were being powered by the Bing search index. That's what they were looking to when they did a live web retrieval. Now it's starting to shift to their own index of the web and gluing things together from different places. So built on that foundation, the other things I'd highlight is AI citations are kind of becoming like the new backlink. So if you're joining us from an SEO background, you've probably been familiar with the backlink ecosystem of like, how do I increase my site's relevance by getting linked through other places? And you may pay to play. What we're seeing is that may still be relevant from a search optimization perspective, but for AI search, you want to make sure your brand is mentioned on the websites that are already being cited. right? So brand consistency, not just on your own website, but on third-party websites. PR is becoming a huge new fixture in this equation, like really rising to prominence to make sure there's consistent brand content across your own presences and your third-party presences. Um, the last thing I'd highlight is conversational tone, right? I kind of have a playful video I've put out on LinkedIn around, if you ever to Google for a recipe, you end up on a website where you can't find the ingredients to the recipe. You end up on a website with someone's life story. If it's a pizza recipe, the word pizza is on that recipe page 60 times. We wrote that page for the Google bot. Like we did not write that for humans to consume. Everyone's like, is the internet going to get worse because of AI? I actually think it's going to get way better because AI models kind of work the way we do. They're large language models, which is essentially what humans are. We intake a bunch of information and try to synthesize the answer, and models do that for us. So I'm seeing a massive shift towards conversational prose, to restructuring pages into more long tail intent. Hey, an AI agent is browsing on behalf of Scott, a leader in Martech, based in this area with this background. It's looking for information to match to his prompt. And so I think we'll see a proliferation of personalization, but the foundation of getting the SEO core right, so you're showing up in the index, thinking through how do I get included in the answer is about making sure my content is very consumable for AI, and then thinking through more of my distributed content strategy, not just my own content, but content on third-party websites.
Yeah, that could I follow up on that
Yeah.
last one here because yeah, you mentioned like okay, SEO pros have sort of mastered the art of backlinks, in some cases the dark art of backlinks. But yeah, if I'm understanding you right, okay, it's not just about links anymore. That might have some impact in like, underlying indexes, but as these engines are coming up with their conversational answers, the degree to which they're synthesizing sources where explicitly your brand being mentioned, and presumably not not a keyword stuffing of just hey brand name here 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 here, but having it really appear in the sort of like factual answers and conversational insights that these engines are looking for. Do you see people doing this? Is this what we're trying to do? Is now optimize the exposure of like our brand name, and where do we even think about doing that?
Yeah. I always encourage people to start with the basics, which is like if you're on the marketing team for a Fortune 100 firm or a small business, go to the model and start asking questions for topics you want to show up in. And make sure you don't bias the model. Like if you put your brand name in the prompt, you're probably going to show up. That's a good place to start. See what content it used from your website, from other websites. But if you ask questions more high in the funnel, top of funnel, right? Of like, hey, I'm looking for a great place to stay for a getaway weekend in Maine. What does the model use to answer the question? Is it using TripAdvisor? Is it using a list of the top 10 bed and breakfasts? Is it using your website because you had a guide to weekend getaways in Maine? Like, just go sort through it and make sure you do it in an incognito browser, because if you do the searches on your own, it's going to bias it to you, which is one input. Or use a platform like ours. There's many in the space, but our thinking is how do you deeply evaluate the different sources that models are consistently using, right? So we are running millions of prompts across our platform and saying, look, for a key topic area for a brand, like let's use Disney Plus as an example, like a large streaming platform, I may want to monitor a bunch of questions on like family friendly content. Moms are popping on ChatGPT saying, what platforms are safe content for my kids to consume? What content is getting used to answer that question? And
Mhm.
your PR team may want to go prioritize work with the websites that are showing up and trusted by AI. And this is very early days. I actually think we're going to see AI models shift towards using more brand content. There's always going to be ways you can game these third-party content platforms by writing fake content and putting it on third-party sites or paying to play. That's going to be a piece of it. But we are seeing people shift their PR strategy, their third-party content strategy, to make sure their brand is consistently and accurately represented on places that we know the model is using to answer questions.
Okay. Let me ask the other side of this. So one is like
Yeah.
actually getting this stuff out in the world, but the other thing is, search marketing practices and kind of develop the, the metrics and performance measurements.
Mm.
How do we know that we're doing a good job?
Yeah.
What are the metrics different in AI search
Yeah.
compared to SEO?
Yeah. Maybe I'll share a screen for a second. I pulled up a a couple screens, hoping we'd get a couple leading
Ooh.
questions. Let's just highlight a couple of things. So the first thing I encourage people to do is dig into your weblogs. Like there's a new way to think about the customer journey, right? We've got human visitors to our website, and then we've got AI visitors to our website. So this is real data for scrunchai.com, and the related pages off of it. We integrate with Akamai, Cloudflare, Vercel, WordPress, et cetera, to monitor this. And we're saying in the last 30 days, we've had 21,000 confirmed AI visitors to our website. And they're doing one of three things. Retrieval agents are live retrieving content off of the website because somebody asked a question in ChatGPT. Literally what's happening is I'm on ChatGPT saying, how much does Scrunch cost? And it's out there trying to piece together the information. We can see a retrieval agent is arriving. Training bots are periodically scraping everything they can on the web. This has been a little controversial. Sometimes they're doing it with permission or without permission, but they're trying to get all the content they can to update their models. What do we know about Scrunch? And then on the indexing side, this is where they are indexing web pages for future retrieval, right? This is where they're basically saying, I don't want to use Google's index or Bing's index. I want my own index of the web. And if I scroll down, I can see the most frequent agents on my page. I can see what content they're most frequently using. When was the last time this page was trained on, indexed, or retrieved? And then I've got a live feed of the buyer journey, right? If I were to refresh this, I'd be able to see during this discussion, I'm sure in the last 30 minutes, we've had a whole bunch of net new visitors to our page. Let's take a look. Yeah, since we've talked, Scott, we've probably had 30 new visitors to our website. Perplexity's retrieval agent, ChatGPT's retrieval agent. So the first place I start in AI search is like, concretely measure this. There's a lot of things that you kind of need to estimate in AI search, but this one you can concretely measure. The next thing I'd concretely measure would be, well, what are people asking about in AI search? And I think it's really important to clarify here, you can't get this data directly from the models. ChatGPT is not sharing this. We have spent a year piecing together panel data sets to get a sense of what are people actually asking and what's the actual response back from the model. Organize that by topic and area. Favorite these, dig in and understand your brand's presence associated with any given topic. Then you get into a little bit more of a black box of, okay, well, how is my brand represented from a presence, position, sentiment against my competitors? Then you're going to want to run a bunch of synthetic prompts to understand kind of your overall presence. But the first two things are pretty concrete. You can track the visitors that are AI to your website. You can track estimated volumes. Then you can track your presence position against your peers. Then on the output, you have some really concrete metrics to track. You can track how frequently are AI agents referring traffic to my website. Go set it up in Google Analytics or use a platform like ours. Hey, ChatGPT referred a visitor. Once that visitor is on your website, you can track conversion. That's where we're getting actual conversion rate data. So there's about 7 or 8 things we track with all of our customers. And I like to remind people about 3 of those are irrefutable. The 4 or 5 in the middle, you need to find a trusted partner or do it yourself to get your best understanding because you're trying to piece together some data and it's good to be clear about that's where the space is. You can understand by asking questions of the model what the actual responses are back and do that at scale. So those are I know that's a lot, but those are the 7 or 8 things. And like you said at the onset, I would encourage brands to focus way more on the referral rates and the conversion rates. Am I getting included in answers? Am I converting? And that's only going to get more concrete as experiences move into the ChatGPT feed, right? As we can actually purchase from the feed. It remains to be seen how much consumers want to do that, but we're trending that direction.
Cool. All right. Well, we're definitely going to follow up here on how do you start to think about the evolution of your website to better serve these particular these bot visitors. But maybe one just more question here on like the distinction from SEO to AI search. With SEO, Google had some very firm rules about like, okay, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. Are there any sort of like, no-nos? Like, what are the rules of like working with these AI engines? Are there things you should just not do or get banned from life? I don't know. How do they think about
Yeah, it's emerging, right? I mean, Google has rules and they're always changing the rules. If you go talk to any SEO practitioner, there's always angst as model changes, as algorithm changes occur. I think very clearly model providers don't want to be tricked or misled. And there's many cases of this. Like if you go poke around the web, you'll hear stories where people put a bunch of misleading information on a page in, transparent font and the model scrapes it and thinks it's the answer. You're going to get punished for that type of thing. If you're trying to trick the model, you're going to get punished. We see people misusing third-party content, right? They'll create a third-party post with inaccurate information on it, and the model will read it and think it's an unbiased third-party source. I expect as that we're dealing with the smartest technology in the world, as these models improve, we're going to see that they're going to address kind of the misuse in different points. Google famously has a standard called cloaking, right? On the search engine optimization side, do not trick or mislead the model. Do not serve something that is different than the experience of a human, right? Now, what we're seeing on the AI side is standards starting to emerge. LLMs.txt is an example, which is like, hey, there are structures that models really benefit from to get accuracy. And so we're testing a lot of that with our clients, with our agent experience platform, saying, look, maybe you have a page that is really JavaScript heavy or very multimedia heavy. We know the retrieval agents are not watching that video. We know they're not looking at the images to understand the intent yet. We know they're not clicking through all the JavaScript or dealing with the dropdowns. We're helping customers translate the intent of those pages of, hey, this page is about my pricing and my features. Here is structured markdown that represents the exact intent of the page so the model can answer questions about my pricing and features. So I think it's very early in this shift. Overall, what I would say is do not misuse these capabilities. Do not trick the models. Do not try to mislead a model provider because there could be repercussions. Think about what is the intent of what I'm trying to communicate and how do I make that really easy for the AI platform to consume? Those are the things I'd be keeping top of mind. And Kevin, I don't know if there's some questions coming through tied to
Yeah,
past topics or this one.
yeah. I was about to chime in and say Hannah has asked a really interesting question that kind of like nice segues into our other topic here of like from going from MarTech to marketing to technology. The question from Hannah is more around, what are some best ways to implement conversion rate optimization for not just for humans but for agents? And so that kind of gets us into the like what we can do for marketing to technology kind of topic. So maybe Scott or Chris, if you want to kind of cover some questions or what's on this slide too, but I think that was a question from Hannah that ties nicely into this topic here.
What I think this is, yeah, I mean, it speaks right to the heart of it. You know, I you had said this earlier in one of our discussions, Chris, and it really resonated with me. This idea of us marketing to machines, again, it isn't net new. This is the whole world of search and SEO, and the fact that SEO has been such a massive portion of what digital marketing thinks about is a testament to like, yes, we recognize it. It's not that the machine is our customer, at least not yet, but the machine is a conduit, to the customer. And so we have to be marketing in a way that serves both that machine's interests in proxying for the customer as well as the customer directly. The difference is, of course, like, okay, it used to be that, sorry, Bing, there was like one player, on the planet we had to optimize for. And now, yeah, it's this fascinating explosion of like many, many different players. All is to your point earlier, like evolving very rapidly. So it sounds like, yeah, we're definitely in a world where we have to think about marketing to technology. But I'd love your take on this, Chris, of like, what does this mean when we've got now actually multiple constituents in that machine cohort?
Mm. The first thing I'd start with, it means that if you've been in SEO for 1 day or 20 years, you're one of the few people who has been focused on marketing to technology, right? SEO practitioners have been marketing to the Google bot since the beginning of the Google bot. So I actually think you have a leg up in this new journey of thinking about, well, how do I market to technology that's representing humans, right? Going back to Scott's very original slide, agents for customers. We're each going to have technology working on our behalf for the things we want to outsource, and that's going to impact how and when we market to them, right? So to answer a couple questions, and we can go back to the current slide, what I would say is there's a question here on like, are LLMs easily manipulated today? Are they less intelligent than we give them credit for? Actually, I think you're largely right, Theo. They're deeply intelligent about what they're able to do with information. Maybe their judgment on where to put the weight is not quite there yet, and that will improve, right? So can you go trick a model today? Yes, you probably can. It's shown. Like there's been a whole bunch of researchers that have tricked models to kind of inject things and mislead them. Is that going to be how a timeless brand scales their reputation and maintains control of the customer journey? No. I always encourage people like say the idea twice. If someone's like, I built a tool that automates, commenting on every Reddit thread about your topic area, say that twice and think about the Reddit community and know that you will be banned and that your customers are going to turn on you, right? Think about who you're marketing to. And in this case, I think we're marketing to large language models because they're working on our behalf. What's interesting to me on this slide is just the pace of adoption here. So last numbers I pulled, about 14 billion unique Google searches daily. You're seeing the trend on prompts just from ChatGPT massively moving up month over month. Now, a prompt is not equal to a Google search. There's different intent. You might do 10 prompts for every search, but the numbers are trending, right? The numbers are trending in a different way here. The bot traffic is accelerating, as I showed you on our own website, and it's converting at a higher level. There's a great research study from Bain highlighting that fewer and fewer people, or more and more people, are relying on that summary from AI overviews or the ChatGPT results. So I do think, going to another question, Hannah, thinking about content optimized for AI on your page in different places is a fantastic strategy. We're seeing glossary pages, FAQ pages, conversational pages heavily being cited by models to educate them on your products, on your areas of interest. And so it's exploratory right now, but I think platforms are emerging that are helping you think more about content management, content optimization, and content delivery in a world where AI is the primary consumer of that content. So I expect that shift to continue. Kevin, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read through any of the open questions. We can try to jump into them if you have.
Yeah, there was a few that you kind of answered just now, maybe like a little bit more specifics there on, it was from Hannah's question that other people chimed in on. They're like, what about the Webflow's version of like, this page was designed for LLMs, or this is LM.text. To my understanding, that doesn't actually work now. Maybe it will in the future. It's just seen as regular content, but maybe like Chris, there's more there that you want to add color to.
Yeah, you know what? It's always good to go to the data. What the data says on LLMs.txt is that it doesn't hurt you. So like I would say there's no damage in doing it. Now it is not being used in live retrieval to answer questions, right? So all the data we've seen from our own data, from studies from SEO practitioners, is that when models are answering questions, they are never retrieving an LLMs.txt file. They're retrieving your pages or versions of your pages to answer the question. Now, we are seeing sometimes those LLMs.txt pages being used for training data, right? So there's a distinction here. Like the training data is used to periodically update a model. And so if you've built out an LLMs.txt file on your product capabilities or your features, know that that may be crawled to update a future model's understanding of your brands and products. And so you want to keep that information accurate and timeless so that it is up to date when it is retrieved, but we're not seeing it used for live answers yet today.
Yeah.
Your
We have
future self will
another.
thank you.
Oh. We have another question that maybe takes us into the third topic here of the AI first customer journey. So Stefan asks, do you think the website build is going to shift from human ingestible view to an AI agent ingestible view, such as like a vector DB? I think that's probably a question that Chris is probably suited to answer, but also probably one that I've seen in Scott's list of questions for us. So maybe I'll let you take it, Chris.
Yeah, I think, we're predicting the future here, which is always a little bit risky. My personal view is I think we're going to move to components of the web being non-visual, like content repositories that agents have access to. I mean, if you think about what the customer service agents are doing today, that's essentially what they're doing. And Scott's kind of middle column, if you have a support agent, it's retrieving a bunch of tickets and FAQs and using that information to answer a question so the consumer never has to look at that. I believe when you think about the far right here of agents of customers, the agents of the customers don't want to battle your web page for the answer. I think they want to retrieve information to get the accurate answer. And so we're thinking through a lot of that from a content management, content optimization, content delivery perspective. And I wouldn't say it's here yet, but I think there's going to be a future of the internet where there's going to be non-visual content repositories that are available to agents of customers to retrieve and get the information they need. And I think that's going to be a significant shift and one that our platform team is building for. So it's a great question. Scott, I don't know if you have any perspectives. We're all here to guess the future, so there's no wrong answers.
I mean, so I tend to agree with you. I think in many ways, like this goes back to sort of integrations, in internal MarTech systems, and like, hey, part of the benefit of designing your product in a way that you have good APIs is to make it composable, to make it play well with the rest of your MarTech stack. It's almost like we've had a good 10, 15 years of thinking about how do we optimize the way our internal MarTech stack works well together. And in some ways, I look at this as like, okay, well, this is actually just expanding the boundaries of this to recognize it in kind of a strange way. A lot of these external agents, they become part of our broader MarTech stack,
Mm,
and they're going to want to interact with that, in ways that are, optimized for the way machines work. But it's also going to be one of these things where I think it's also going to require us to continue to develop the way we think about like the security, the performance management, the monitoring. Integration has been a challenge, inside the MarTech stack. And so I expect we're going to have a little bit of architectural work to do to keep up with making that available externally too. But I
mm,
think ultimately that's the way to like really get to a place where the machines themselves can be most efficient.
mm.
I keep thinking of that, like video they show of the, yeah, like the two AI agents talking over voice, recognizing they're both AI agents, and then switching to the gibberish. Oh yeah, here's a more optimal language for us to get things done.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit like that.
Agreed. I mean, I think if we go back to the journey slides, Kevin, I think
Yeah.
the fun part about this shift, I think, for marketers and builders is it's impacting each of us personally. And so I always try to like ground in that truth, which is what do you want to do as a consumer? What do you want your buyer to, what do you want to outsource to AI? Where do you want to be involved? Do you want to land on said product's website and chat with an AI agent? Do you want to do that? Or would you prefer your AI agent to do that for you? There are some things that are delightful that we want to be engaged in. I always find it a little bit ironic that every time there was AI hype videos, it was like, we're gonna outsource all the executive assistants. We're gonna outsource all of the travel agents, all of the personal and wait a second, like people still like to shop. People still like to compare things and make the decision for themselves. People like to feel the status of being an airline preferred member and like pick their flight. And I think some of the things we're outsourcing are the reading of content, the reading of like top of funnel jargon that we know is led to kind of bias us. And so if you're a marketer, I think put your hat on of like, okay, well, who is this piece of content actually for? There was a question in the thread of like, should we be thinking about content experiences for agents, not just the traditional channels around email and search? And I think we should. I think you should start thinking of agents as a first class consumer of content, potentially a first class actor on behalf of a human, and start to map what that looks like and test it. So I would definitely think about those things. I want to answer another question in the thread. Thoughts on marketplaces and AEO? Is it possible to make a marketplace drive answers to answer engines? It certainly is. I think if the marketplace has information on products that people are seeking out, you may be able to be found in those searches. Run the prompts and find out is step one. If you have value add information on the marketplace site around like what are the categories that are covered in the marketplace? Why are those who are those categories interesting for? This is a marketplace for these people. Guide the model to give it valuable content to help it complete its task. I think that's the mindset that great marketers are going to move forward with. So I know we kind of skipped these two slides, but like if you think of the collapse of the AI led customer journey, we had all these steps from a human perspective. And I mean this a little bit in jest, but this is the first time that I think we've ever seen word of mouth being disrupted, right? There were people in our lives who we turned to for questions on financial services, on car purchases, on healthcare. And we are definitely seeing that the nature of prompts means people are turning to their AI agent as a word of mouth expert. Hey, who should I go to? I got a bonus. Where should I invest it? There's three people in my life I'd probably ask of that. And now I'm asking ChatGPT as well. It's got a lot of information to pull from. So I think this AI assisted recommendation layer is going to continue to collapse the customer journey. Those are things that we're keeping top of mind as a team for sure.
I'm gonna try to do my job as a moderator and consolidate two questions here
Sure.
and point them at Scott. And this is there's a couple questions here around just what is the future of roles in marketing and like also just generally future of go-to-market strategy, go-to-market execution, and like how are you seeing that change with AI and AI search? I think like one of the really pointed questions is like, are there different roles that we need to be thinking or hiring for? And maybe Scott, you have a thought there. If not, I'm sure Chris does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like we could probably do a whole webinar just on how the transformation of go-to-market in general is proceeding. I would say what I see the most successful companies in the space doing right now is, first of all, recognizing we're in a period of change. And so, like, if you've had these very strict structures, very fixed processes, this is my domain, this is not your domain. That's actually very hard to move quickly. And so whether they're doing it org-wise or even just within small teams, being able to take groups of folks, particularly cross-functional, very often trying to think beyond just any one individual channel, and have them really be the tip of the spear of experimenting with, like, okay, how do we start to adapt both behind the scenes, our processes for generating the right sort of content and support and engagement mechanisms for our customers, but then also being able to like figure out like, okay, how are we experimenting with how we're showing up in these agents of customers? I think this, structure of cross-functional pods that like break out of like the traditional silos within organizations just seems to be like a really great way to tiger team what's happening here in the broader AI evolution that companies are going through.
Agreed. Maybe I know we're tight on time here, Kevin. If you just go to the QR code slide in it, we'll skip any deep Scrunch specific questions and send them for a demo or a free trial or a chance to kind of speak with our team, so we don't turn this into a pitch. But if you've got questions on our platform, yes, there's an agentic version of the Scrunch interface. What we can do from a monitoring perspective, scan that QR code, go to one of our websites to book a demo with somebody from our team. Would love to walk you through the details on it. But from my side, have hugely enjoyed this conversation. I think, Scott, appreciate you being willing to do this. I've really enjoyed our conversations leading up to it. I think literally after our first chat, I was like, we should have just recorded that hour because it was like bouncing all over the place in terms of where this world's going. And I appreciate you grounding it in some of the things that are concrete. Like, humans are using agents today. It's still in a pretty elementary form. Businesses can track this. Businesses can make sense of what's happening in the early stages of this shift. And I think it's on all of us to think through what that impact is going to be and what we want it to be as a consumer. Like, the beauty of this shift is it's impacting each of us personally. And then as marketers, we can apply against that. And I always think it's important here from a disclaimer perspective to highlight, if you meet somebody who tells you they know all of the answers in this space, I would run away. Like, this world is dynamic, it is changing. We are partnering with our customers to try to navigate that shift. There is so much unfolding in real time, whether it's new agentic browsers, whether it's the APIs and the ecosystem of apps in the ChatGPT type experiences. It's such a fun time to be building and partnering and testing together. We don't know all the answers. It's fun to consult with people who have been through these types of waves in the past with what Scott's led on the MarTech side. But it's invigorating to build. So really appreciate the questions we've gotten today. That's my closing. Scott, I don't know if there's anything for you to add before we turn it to Kevin for any last questions and a wrap up.
Oh man, I think that's a great way to close it out. I mean, I feel like I've been saying this for a while, but I feel it now more than ever. What an amazing time to be in marketing. Don't get me wrong, it's an intense time, it's an exhausting time, but like this moment where you're actually able to be at the frontier of how marketing is actually changing and like being one of the people who can help write this new playbook of how this is going to be run over the next 10, 15 years. That's an incredible gift to just be at that inflection point. And so, yeah, I hope the folks who are tuning in on this really do recognize that it's an opportunity to lean into the inspiration.
I think it's a great thing to end on. We've already done a pretty good job of addressing the audience questions. If there's more, you can just email us or email me, hit me up on LinkedIn, hit Chris up on LinkedIn. I'll probably do the same for Scott. We've had this plug slide for Scrunch for a while on the screen here. The last thing I want to do is just turn it over to you, Scott, to see if there's anything you want to plug, any new research coming out that get people excited about, and then we can end it.
Sure. Well, first of all, definitely check out Scrunch. I've been using the product a bit myself. I think you'll learn a lot just by getting hands-on with it. My main pitch will be we've got our Martech for 2026 report coming out in the beginning of December. And if it's all right, I'll just throw a link here in the chat as well, too. You're more than welcome to sign up for that as well.
Yeah, we will share that as a resource in post too to everyone who is on the recording here and the people who want to just get the recording. So thanks for that. And thanks for everyone for joining. We had a really nice outcome and lots of great conversation. So we'll follow with recording soon. And thanks, Scott, and thanks, Chris. And have a good one, everyone.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kevin. Thanks, Scott. See everybody.